All right. Hello, friends. Hi. I'd like to welcome Judy. Hi, Judy. How are you?
Hey, Alexi, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Tell It Like It Is podcast. Thanks for taking this time out. I know you're super busy.
Never too busy for you, my friend. We always have great conversation, and so I'm excited.
See, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. So you were asking me what exactly is the frame for the podcast. And basically, so much is happening in the world, nothing new, right? And obviously, America, I think, is leading the show in a lot of ways for what the world is going to become. And I think we are all in this generation very important to frame that and take it further and move past just the words that we've been saying and moving more into actions and actually like organizing our steps and actually doing that. And I think everyone's making their own strides in their own way. So I think a part of what I want us to do is to A, be on the same page, and B, to kind of bounce off each other and see how we can consolidate our efforts a little more.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Um, what areas are you what specifically are you most passionate about?
It's so hard because there's a lot. I guess I'm really passionate about social justice informed parenting. That's a new one since I have a 3-year-old and 2 1-year-olds. I'm passionate about white people talking vulnerably about race and racism and our parts in it, like our responsibility, rather than over there, the bad white people, and over here are the good white people. And so I put a lot of energy into that recently. Passionate about education. I work in higher ed. I think higher ed is just an incredible place where we we get into it in so many different ways. I love the work and continue to be passionate about it. So yeah, those are some 3 good areas. So where are you intrigued? Where do you want to dig in?
I'm very passionate in about having spaces for us to connect, having real community spaces. Obviously we're in the middle of pandemic, so community space is taboo right now. But I mean, a place like the YMCA, where on an average day you can just walk in and play a board game with local people. I think spaces like that are really on the decline, and they're more expensive, and it like, where would you do something like that?
Well, actually, it's something that you and I have talked about before that still stays in my mind. I think we must have talked about it in the first year we knew each other, is 5 years ago, if you can believe it. That talking about like doing a almost like a summer camp commune for families that have kids who can't watch themselves, and sort of rotating, having it be, your kids come over, a few other kids' families come over to my house one day, and then they go to your house another day, and we kind of rotate. And I just find that to be very radical. Like you're saying, that it's not all the same age. We do things so much in education, they all have to be the same age, all the 1-year-olds have to be together, all the 2-year-olds have to be together. And that's not reality. You're going to interact with so many different people. And I think kids having to learn how to work with kids of different knowledges and abilities, so the way that your 9-year-old is going to interact with my 3-year-old is going to be different than how a 9-year-old interacts with a 13-year-old. And that's valuable. It's valuable for the kids to learn that. So I love that idea of shared space, in part because it also is built on, there's some existing relationships. Like it is serendipitously, it's nice to run into strangers, play a board game with an unexpected stranger. And I think there's also so much value in networks that we already have that might be looser. There might be, I know there's lots of families in your life who I know a little bit, but if we were all to be part of this sort of summer camp commune together, we would really get to know each other and we would really deepen our relationships. So I'm so into that idea. And I think there's so much, the modern American compartmentalizing of, the hyper individual, this is where my family goes, this is where your family goes, even though there'd be so much that would be better if we shared. It reminds me when I lived in Poughkeepsie, we had friends who every Sunday night when there was good weather would just have a barbecue. And so you just knew it was just a standing barbecue, 5 o'clock, and sometimes there'd be 5 people there, sometimes there'd be 30 people there. And that's when the pandemic's over, that's my goal, is to have, maybe for the month of July or the month of September or whatever, just a standing time so that that we can do community building with more regularity than just here's a party, here's a party, here's a party. So
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Yeah. So, for me, I think people like things more formalized. They like things like written down and more structured. And yeah, I do think I obviously want something for myself. And I do tend to think about, how can someone else reproduce this and that kind of thing. And making this community actionable.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely. How have you, um, are you doing any work in particular right now that you wanted to talk about? Because I know we haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah. The work, the day job, I'm just helped launched winter session at Princeton, which is, excuse me, I didn't help launch it. I launched it. I need to, there's like this thing where it's like, it was da-da-da. It's like, no, I launched it. It was awesome. And the whole idea is to have an alternative learning space. So things aren't mandatory, things aren't graded. And it's really emphasizing experimentation. And your partner taught something during it. Many other staff, faculty, undergrad, grad students taught things. So I love that. Outside of kind of the work, I'm in a couple groups that are about like basically white people getting real about racism and white identity. And so that's sort of, that's been really rewarding and interesting and
Is that
challenging.
online?
What's that?
Is that online?
Yeah. So there's 2 groups. There's one at work but it's sort of like, at lunchtimes. And then there's one of my friends, just, mostly college friends. And
And
it's so interesting to see what's the same about the groups and some of the same ways that white people talk about it. And it's this sort of like the liberal white people jam where everyone's like, I don't want to do anything wrong, but oh my God, I'm spinning in my own head, but I'm not actually being useful for racial justice when I just spin in my head. So there's sort of a certain type that we all are, but it's been really interesting seeing the differences between the people who are my, friends who, held my hair back over toilets in college versus the people that I'm in work with and the ways that there's still, that professionality. So all of those efforts have been really interesting and challenging. So I'm enjoying it.
I find that it's one thing to talk about the work, but when it comes time to do the work is going to be done in person, right? So if your college friends are like all over and spread out, it's hard to say, let's meet at this time and this is what we're going to do, as opposed to brainstorming together and then doing your individual things.
Yeah, it's totally more of the latter, which is, and it's not meant to just be a book club space. It's not meant to be cool. Learning is always good, but there's a certain point where as white people, we can just do a lot of navel gazing and not actually be useful to friends and community members of color. And so we talk about a lot, what are the actions that we're going to do in our spaces? And so a recent discussion was about hiring practices and how do we actually hire more people of color, either people that we positions that we supervise or positions that we advocate for or serving on hiring committees. And so we've had that conversation both in the Princeton group and then the non-Princeton group. What I like about it is these are people all over the country. So there's somebody who's thinking about what that means in film production in Texas. There's somebody who's thinking what that means in dual language school in Brooklyn. So I think even though we are virtual, it's these spaces for accountability, I think, is really important, because we don't want to just press pause, like, oh, we can't do anything on social justice efforts until the pandemic is over, or like, oh, it's too hard. But I think those of us who care about social justice need to challenge ourselves. How do we shift what action looks like? If it's not necessarily going to be this protest or this community meeting, but it's going to look, maybe more micro or maybe less visible, but that doesn't necessarily mean less effective.
I feel like we need like things on paper, like people taking like visible stands where, we so and so have formed this group and we take a stand for social justice and we believe this and this and this needs to be addressed. That way like-minded people can sign on to that, like physically sign on to that and say, yes, I'm a part of that. I think
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful right now.
Yeah. And are there, things that you've seen in your local community, or we're just a town away, but in your local community or in your networks, things that you think are really, promising social justice actions or efforts? Wow. Oh, no.
I would be lying if I said anything other than that.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that, I mean, kind of like how you would have a church, right? How, hypothetically, a church is a place where you can go and say, hey, I'm getting evicted tomorrow. Can you help? I think we need some place where, we know this group stands with people of color. Does any group like that exist that stand out for you?
I mean, not in our town, not in our town, Princeton. And then there's other chapters, and Standing Up for Racial Justice, Surge. Not in our town is multiracial.
Do you
And
feel like
Surge.
do you feel like that group is doing that? Do you feel like you want to do that with them? Do you feel like there's a disconnect between them and you and what you believe? Like, what's your relationship to that?
Yeah, not in our town. I've gone to more like their presentations and some of their lectures, but they meet pretty regularly. I think they're doing awesome work. I think they've been really influential in changing some of they're advocating for racial literacy curriculum at Princeton High and sort of helping support some of the things that are going on. So I think they're an example of a very actionable group. And I can't take any credit, it's a group that I'm more on the periphery of, that especially when we are in person, I want to get more involved in. And I think the key to some of their success is that they are hyper local, that they're like, we're going to be at the council meetings, we meet at the library, we're going to advocate for this with the Board of Education in Princeton, and we're going to do this with the high school. So I think it's an incredible organization, and it's been around for a while. I mean, maybe it's 20 years. So I think it's looking for the local power centers like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I have noticed them, and usually like I go to the library and I'll catch like the tail ending of the meeting. So I started missing them. Obviously, this was before the pandemic. So like they were on my to-do list. I think, we just need visible spaces. I mean, I've seen a significant amount of Black Lives Matter signs in people's yards around Princeton. And I think that's nice. I think we need something like a Sunday morning coffee kind of thing,
Mm, I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, because it's, I think that I agree with you that the statements are important that you need to be able to see, you know, when you're just walking by your neighbor's house, especially in the pandemic where you can't necessarily interact. I remember having this knee-jerk negative reaction when those signs started coming out that were like, in this house, we believe in love is love, science is real, Black lives matter. You know, you can recite it with me because they're so ubiquitous. And I was sort of having this like, what does that even mean? Like, people are just throwing this up. And then it was my wife who was like, but why is that bad? You know, why, even if all of their actions, you know, even if not every day they're acting on all of those things, you know, why is it bad to have some kind of visible affirmation? And especially, you know, us as a queer couple, I think she was sort of saying she likes, you know, she likes when she's walking around her neighborhood to see that there's some affirmation. So I really had to think about that because I was sort of quick to be like, that's nothing, that's not action, whatever.
Right.
And I think it's just, we need all things. We need activism, plural,
Right.
because it's not, you know, we absolutely need the really high profile marches, and we need, you know, the random person sticking up a sign, and, you know, young Black kids see it, young queer kids see it, you know, young scientists see it, whomever sees it. So that really made me reflect that, you know, action is not the only thing that's important. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think the sign is a good step. You know, I wouldn't say I think the sign's a bad idea. I do like the sign for sure. Um, and I think you know I think the main thing that I keep hearing is I don't know what to do. You know, and I get that, and I really don't fault anyone.
Do you hear that from white people or people of different races?
Like white people who want to help, you know, or want to be not a part of the problem. They're like, well, I don't know what to do, you know, that kind of thing. And if the sign is your first step, I think the second step would be find places you can show up to and be in like a physical space for those things where we believe blah blah blah. So we're all here, we believe that, you know. So we have that.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with someone else, and they basically were saying we don't know what to do. And I was saying one of the things you should be doing is invite random people over. And not random as in, hey, you, let's come over my house, but through a dialogue. And you know, most people are friendly. You have a friendly conversation and you say, hey, I'd like to have you over for dinner. To me, that's the best way to say we believe in love and all of these things, you know. So
Yeah, I agree with you that the relationships that you know, being motivated to stay in it with social justice efforts, especially ones that don't directly benefit you, you know, so like if someone's going to come a marching with me for LGBTQ rights, there has to be something that sustains them. And I think you've hit it, that it's the relationships that have to sustain you, and seeing that even though you might not have the identity that you are advocating for, that there are people who are connected to you. And so it's like, if I, you know, understand that Black people, Latino people, Asian people, Native people, that these are not just abstract concepts of like, yeah, generally it's good for people of all races to have equal rights. But if I actually have an investment and it's hard. I mean, especially I was reading that our schools are more racially segregated than they were in the 50s. And so it means that, you know, people have to take that step out if they're not going to be in, it's like you look at, I know the test is like, look at your wedding photos, you know, if you're married, like what are the races represented in your wedding photos, or, you know, your best friend retreats or whatever, what's the racial makeup? And I think, you know, for a lot of us, especially, you know, white people are the most segregated people. Like, let's just make that clear. It's not everybody equally. This is, you know, Beverly, Tatum's Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? What she was actually saying was that really the white kids are sitting together in the cafeteria, but we think that that's more normal and we don't notice the white kids. But anyway, so I totally think it's like we have to extend ourselves. How do you, when you think about that, how have you done that? You are such a friendly and inviting person. Do you have like an example of when you just reached out to somebody random and it ended up being a great connection?
I find that people are skeptical of one another.
Hmm.
And the skepticism is to the level of, I know you're not a killer. I mean, I know you're not going to poison me, but there's just this general, I'm busy, I'd rather not have to deal with this thing right now. And it boggles me. And I guess that's why I'm fit for the work that I do. But people make it seem difficult, and I feel uncomfortable offering myself in that way because people are so resistant to it
So have you been rebuffed?
all the time,
Oh,
all the time. I think, you know, this is all pre-COVID and
right.
pre-George Floyd, right? So now, since George Floyd, there's a renewed sense of, oh yeah, we actually do care. But before that, like even in a place like church, you kind of you have to like, it's like you're dating, or like you're trying to date. You have to kind of like entice them. I have a special meal, and I just got this special new balcony, and it can't just be a come over for bullshit food. Like, you have to really entice them, and like, what are they invited, like it's just this weird skepticism. and and
Yeah.
and and it's not like a black white thing. I mean, people in general, there's just this slowness to open yourself up.
Yeah. I think it's an adult, definitely like a learned adult guardedness that, it's so great when you see kids they're just playing with whoever, next to me at the playground. I don't know, and it's so much harder for adults. We haven't been socialized necessarily to be open um, in those ways. But I feel like I've been to a lot of things at your house where it seems like a mix of people who didn't know each other before. I guess they mostly work at Princeton, so there's still like some,
Darlene,
trusted, organized.
Darlene is better. Darlene get a better reception than I do. So when I do it, it's there's a lot more. She plays that better than I do. Um, and I can't, it is what it is. But I think we would all enjoy that world a lot more. And I think it's one thing to say, come to my house, and it's another thing if we had this local community center where it's like everyone's like, I think if you ask me, Alexi, what would I do? I would say, deduct it out of everyone's taxes, have a community center. There's no dues, it's already paid for, giant grill, indoor spaces, playgrounds. And in the wintertime, I think tons of people would be there,
Oh yeah.
and like, why doesn't every town have one of these things?
Yeah. I think in the Princeton Library to me is a micro example of that, because I do think there can be serendipitous meetings. And actually you were the one who got us to start going, because I remember you took when Sierra was, I feel like 6 months or
Yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah.
you took her and you said, oh yeah, the library does story time. And it's, so we started going, and then of course the pandemic interrupted it, but it was such a nice, we'd go for story time and then just kind of wander around. And true, maybe there weren't meaningful conversations, but I do think kids are this great icebreaker because
Absolutely.
they're just doing whatever they want to do, and they're a way for adults, and I wonder if some of the suspicion is about like people are, don't remember how to make new friends. They don't remember that it's like dating. And so when it's someone's like, come over, Do they think you're trying to date them? I don't know. But how do you feel? Has the library, like, what are the spaces that have partially hit that for you, or are they just not?
You know what I find? I find that people are very friendly when they're working or when you're working.
Hmm.
So, like, if you work at the grocery store and someone starts talking to you, you're more like, oh yeah, I work at the grocery store. It's fine. And they'll tell you their whole life story, you know? But I think when it's just a completely neutral situation, there's just that general sense. And obviously, I'm a male, you're a female, so you may not experience things that way. But I think, you know, I could easily say, like, you know, my boys are in school and they've had classmates for the last 4 or 5 years, and like I know nothing about them and they know nothing about me.
Wow.
And it's just like, oh, hi Alexi, and that's it, you know.
Hmm.
And I think, I mean, I think this came up in the realm of breaking down those cultural barriers, but I think people need to do that in general, you know, even if you have the same exact culture. And some cultures do it more than others, right? Um, I, I I don't see our future as being something far fetched, far away that we can't reach. I see
Yeah.
it as something as, you know, a part of what I'm trying to do with the podcast is kind of have us introduce have us introduce ourselves to each other in this kind of indirect way. And the more conversations that we all kind of agree on, then, you know, we can do like a panel. And then, you know, after the pandemic open back up to in person. And, you know, so many people have groups, but they kind of feel like cliques. And I say the word cliques, meaning like someone new doesn't want to approach a clique.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, they have a great thing over there, but it's just them kind of thing. And, you know, anyone who knows me knows I'm the one who's always like, oh, I met this new person, you know,
Yeah.
come and hang with us kind of thing. And, you know, when you're new to a community, you really appreciate that. And there's plenty of people who's here who's feeling the isolation, and it's just kind of normal. And it's
Yeah.
gotten to a point where, you know, people say America's like the most isolated place and all of these sad statistics. And that's really what I think I'm passionate about. And just as much as social justice, I think we need to kind of break that culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And that they're so connected, that they're just, the more that we're isolated by our identity or by, job or whatever, the less able we are to understand what people need, what they need help with, what they need solidarity with. And I love the idea of especially in the pandemic, that you doing the podcast and you're making all these links, and
Right.
then let's have a podcast party when this is over.
Exactly.
But I
Exactly.
also, you're hitting on something too that's kind of about um okay, well, the term speed friending,
Mhm.
but you're talking about like, just instead of fast food, slow food, instead of speed friending, slow friending, like that you want people to meet and go deep, which I think that's the hardest thing, but that's also the most rewarding thing. And I think it's a really worthy goal.
I mean, go deep. I felt like somebody just cringed at that moment right there. Not go deep. Some people, I listen, we're all human beings dealing with stuff, right? And I think the moment you say go deep, people are like, I don't even want to deal with me. Like, I'm not even ready to deal with me. So A, they don't want to expose themselves to someone else. And B, they're not ready for someone else to expose themselves to them. I
Mm,
find that people kind of like coming to things, not talking about going deep, and just being in a group, you know, mix and mingle a little bit. And just, you know, if you mix and mingle at some point, at some point you will find someone your friend group where you're more comfortable to go deeper with.
Yeah,
But we aren't even mixing and mingling, you
right,
know.
of course.
Riverside has this thing, I forgot the name of it, but basically it's a fundraiser to raise money. So you would say, I'll host a dinner party or a cocktail party at my house. You pay to come to my house for the cocktail party, and it'll raise money for the school. So the money you pay for the cocktail party at my house raises money for the school. So now random people will come to your house for this cocktail party. They paid, raise money for the school, and your donation is whatever you're providing at the party.
Hmm.
So programs like that, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like why isn't this happening everywhere all the time? Like why aren't we like these fun social people who are like, you know, happy hour is really happy hour. You walk into the to a bar and it's like all these adults just having an adult time, you know? Like is it me or do I see or is it like really tense everywhere?
I don't even remember. I mean, that's the sad part. It's like this has become so my reality, like my social reality is, occasional phone calls with friends, texting, Instagram. So I don't even remember. I feel like I would take anything. I would take even, the not great parties. And it'll be so interesting. I mean, it will be this kind of social experiment when this, late summer, whenever it is, when we can more freely get together. I feel like we're going to be so hungry for connection. I think we will go deeper. Like, I mean, I think you and I share that we just are fine with going deep
Right.
quickly. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I TMI, I've been told I'm a purveyor of TMI, especially my siblings are like, oh my God, don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. But I think other people are going to finally, get to our level a little bit of just like this hunger to be, out there with people and vulnerable with people. And, we won't scare them. So we'll still allow people to come who just want to mix and mingle. But I think that's part of what it's like that depth. I miss the depth so much. Like, and I miss seeing people in, the high, but I really miss that random conversation at a dinner party or whatever that you're like, whoa, I did not know that about them. Or, whoa, I'm really thinking differently about this. Or those just don't happen right now for me.
And I mean, you're talking in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. 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 What do you think about like parties on Zoom and connecting on Zoom and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I've tried it and it's been the ones, it's like birthday parties and my family's Scottish. And so we had a Robbie Burns, the national poet or like this Scottish poet where there's a night about him where you eat haggis and you write poems and stuff. So we did that and it was really funny. We had people in California, Minnesota, Philadelphia, so things like that. There's those nice moments, but yeah, it's like it's just easier to sit on the couch, sometimes and feeling tired from the day and the kids. And I think it is easier to pull back even for people like me I call myself an aggressive extrovert. It's like I
Yeah.
hunger for the in-person
Yeah.
but it's just so different. What's your social life like now?
Uh, I think, in the beginning, I was very anti-Zoom, and I primarily work on the phone. I see the kids, and I think my thing was like, it was warmer March, April, May. So it was kind of like, okay, I can do the outside porch 6 feet thing kind of thing. So I just primarily focused on that leading up to, and then, coming into November, obviously that stopped. And, the holidays came. And I think there was a shift for me from that time to now. So yeah, so socially I haven't seen many people since November. Like so
Yeah.
that's
How
when
do you feel about that?
um I think I was dealing with a lot of isolation prior to COVID. And I think, COVID, I think I saw the same amount of people with mask on, 6 feet during COVID, during up to that point. So like, I haven't really been seeing those people since then. And I think it's like a numbing feeling.
Mm.
So yeah. Yeah, I think in my one of my last efforts to see people, a friend of mine said, well, what about the podcast that you're supposed to be doing? So I kind of just shifted the energy that I had left into that. And yeah, so here I am.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's awesome. And I think I understand the numbing, and that it's hard to tell sometimes what's useful for self-preservation in a crisis like this, that there is some just head down, get through it that is valuable. And then to what extent, when do you get to the point where the numbing is bad for you, any of us? And we, in October, same thing that you were saying, where you could tell there's going to be fewer in person, anything. And I just suggested to my wife, why don't we do sober October and not drink? Because I was like curious, what coping mechanisms am I using
Mm.
that I'm not as aware of? And I did feel like I was definitely drinking more alcohol, because as I'm home every night, the
Yeah,
cabinets were there,
yeah,
and I didn't feel like I was,
yeah, I hear you.
drinking my feelings. It was more like I was picking up a habit that I wasn't even noticing I was picking it up.
Right.
And so we did sober October. I only cheated twice. So sorry. I forget. There were certain occasions I had to. I forget what it was about. But it was really like, it was just a very interesting kind of self-experiment. And I'm glad that we did that before the winter so that I could kind of have that information. Um, and now, we're drinking again. So it wasn't meant to be like, let's stop this forever, but more just like, let's just look at our feel. Like, do I feel like I want to drink when I feel tired, when I feel stressed, when I feel like I want to celebrate something for no reason? So it was interesting.
Um, yeah, I think you sound optimistic about what the summer's gonna look like.
Let me have it, Alexi. Let me have.
No, no, no. I'm there with you, but I've spoken to enough people who are like,
No.
yeah, and I think we can be one of the rebellious ones, form a pod, but it seems like even with vaccines, people are still the narrative is still, well, it's mutating, you can still pass it on, blah blah, whatever. To me, I'm a little bit suspicious of it, but it doesn't seem like we're going to have a green light on the summer at all.
Are people saying like we'll still be wearing masks, or
We'll
that
still be
stuff
wearing
will be
masks,
shut
but
down?
this is not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The restrictions won't be lifted in July.
Yeah, I can deal with it if it's masks and we can do stuff outdoors. I don't need to go back. Restaurants to me isn't the number one thing, but it's like, can we go in people's yards for drinks? Can we go to the pool? Can we be on back decks? That
The pool
is
was a hard hit
so
last year.
connected to my happiness.
The pool was a large hit last year.
Were people staying apart from each other, or did it not really? People didn't really social distance.
Yeah, you had to social distance in the pool, and it was this weird kind of like capacity thing. And then you couldn't get like a pool pass for the summer. It was like a pay per.
Oh,
It wasn't the pool. It was like a weird social distance nightmare kind of thing.
so it wasn't fun to go because
Yeah.
you couldn't socialize
Right,
really?
right, exactly.
Oh,
So,
rats.
I mean, I'm praying they don't do that again for the kids' sake.
Yes.
But yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. Well, this has been really fun, my friend. I should probably do the things that call me on my task list. But I am really grateful for you creating this space and just being, you really do draw people in and draw people out. And I really always enjoy talking to you, recorded or not recorded.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. I've had this feeling like if I could share this with other people, I think there would be some benefit. And I think COVID created an opportunity for us to because we're already doing Zooms, right? So COVID created this opportunity to do it, and I think it's a way for people to join in also. So it was just like it to me. I'll see how the reception is, but it was a no-brainer, and I'm glad I did it, and I'm just trying to see if I can do enough of it and take hold, and you know hopefully by July we'll have all of the momentum to have a great summer and be on the tail end of this, and not just back to normal, be better than normal.
I hope so. I really hope so. And yeah, I'll be listening. I'll be listening to your episodes.
All
So
right.
thank you, my
Thank
friend.
you. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate you a lot. And
I
say
appreciate
hello to the family, and we have to debrief soon, okay?
exactly. As soon as the snow melts out there, you can see the deck out there. As soon as that melts,
I know.
we want you all to come over, have
I
a
think it's like
family.
it's mid 45. Stuff's melting today.
Yeah, we will get there.
We just need a rain or something. All right,
Exactly.
good luck with your work, and say hello to everyone for me.
I will. Same to you, Alexi. Bye bye.
All right, so short and sweet. I appreciate Judy for coming on. Um, I really like the conversations because I'm never exactly sure what we're going to touch on, and community is the goal, and moving in, as much as I like talking about politics and explaining those things, to me the goal is in-person community, each one reach one, community at an arm's length. And as you can tell, Judy is like the perfect person to bring that energy, and the like-mindedness is amazing, and I look forward to more conversations with all of you. So with that said, have a great day. Thank you for tuning in this far, and yep, see you soon. Stay safe.